I'm surprised I even understood what he was trying to say. I think we are lucky as fans that he said it in like with his own words in a video as opposed to just typing it out in like a caption or a tweet. Because if Cam Newton would have just texted out, "Hey, everyone, I'm throwing it Auburn's pro day. Come check it out. Trying to make a comeback. I believe I'm one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the league." I think that would have been like, oh no, Cam got like abducted, and someone with just normal font and a clear line of thinking is taking over his social media, and wouldn't have believed it. But if he would have done his normal Cam Newton texting, I think I would have just gotten lost in the sauce and been very unsure what Cam Newton was doing in Auburn's pro day. So we kind of got the happy medium. We know it's Cam. It's from his own words, in his own words, but with a video so we can understand exactly what he's saying, which is he's throwing at Auburn's pro day.
Yeah, he's throwing at Auburn's pro day. I don't know if you knew, but he is throwing at Auburn's pro day. Yeah, and starting it off in classic fashion with like the first 15 seconds of the clip was just him like dancing and classic in a one of those probably the Auburn pro day facility indoors and inside the dome or whatever. But yeah, he's going to be throwing to some of the receivers there. The funny part, Mark, with the video, it was a very classic, like you could show that to upcoming pro day and combine quarterbacks of like not to display. He's throwing off platform, not getting set. There were a couple where he was like just like messing around, falling backwards and tossing it up. Very like non regimented or like structured plays at all. It was just clearly like winging it, which is fine. That's totally cool. But if this is some sort of like a tryout of sorts or trying to showcase that you're still ready for the NFL, might want to do like a couple like 3-step dropbacks and like more normal throws. That was kind of funny to me.
Yeah, also the idea that like he's just ripping off, hey, it got Zach Wilson drafted number 2 overall, just doing like big throws off platform, showing off. Maybe that can help me. He's just going with the Zach Wilson style of making this happen. It's funny. We'll get into this more here in a bit. If you had to choose one situation where you actually think Cam Newton might make sense, I have only one in the top of my mind that I can think of. Do you have any that you think Cam Newton makes sense at all?
Carolina. No, I'm just kidding.
Back.
I actually thought maybe Tampa.
Okay.
Prior to the Baker Mayfield signing, now it wouldn't really make much sense. Gosh, like imagine Cam and Baker in the same locker room.
That would be electric.
That would be wild. But yeah, no, I thought actually Tampa would make sense because he certainly wouldn't have to be Superman in that regard. And I mean, he's got some big time receivers that can make plays down the field, kind of toss it up, use his strength to make, the big plays. Whereas you still have a defense that can keep you in close games and things like that. He just wouldn't have to be the guy in Tampa. But yeah, I hadn't given it much thought. But that would probably be one place where I'd say that would make sense.
Yeah, see, my mind goes to immediately where my mind has gone for any other veteran quarterback who's just looking to play. And I think he's actually the best fit, and that's Arizona, because Kyler is going to miss the majority, if not the whole year.
Well, that's true.
You have a new coaching staff. You're not worried about someone stealing Kyler's job, right? I made the same argument for Wentz. Like, Wentz is the perfect, well, he's not going to steal Kyler's job. We know that it's Kyler's job. Like, Cam's not going to steal Kyler's job. We know that it's Kyler's job. But you could make the argument that Cam is a guy to bring in to say, hey, we can start running the offense that we want Kyler Murray to run and just have Cam run it. Like, there's going to be mobileness to it. There's going to be rollouts. There's going to be designed runs. And then Kyler's got a really nice deep ball. We're going to throw the deep ball. It could make some sense maybe. But Cam is also Cam is a great like study for a lot of these quarterbacks coming on out of just like, hey, you can have a prolific 7-year career and that's all you need to be like the face of the league, make a ton of money, but then also like be willing to know if you're going to be that mobile guy who's going to take the hits, then when it's over, it's over. Like it's just going to be over. And if you become such a big superstar in a short amount of time, like Cam did, make your money, invest it well, because being a backup quarterback who was a former superstar, it never works. It just never works. So if you want the longevity of the league of like what we believe Mitchell Trubisky will have, what we believe we're seeing with Marcus Mariota, where they just keep getting jobs and staying.
Yeah,
you never want to become the superstar. It just never works out, the superstar backup.
Well, yeah, I mean, his career as a backup just never seemed to be in the cards to begin with.
Yeah.
Not that, of course, he's not worthy of a position. He absolutely is. He is among the top, 90, however many are rostered 100 quarterbacks in the world. There's not a question about it. And I actually thought he was a couple of years older. He's 33. But the wear and tear on those tires is a lot more significant than Aaron Rodgers, for instance. So, yeah. I mean, you think about those, and he's probably had the mileage of a quarterback entering his 40th year, as opposed to a quarterback age 33. So that is something to be considered. A couple of years ago, though, when he was making the case, I am among the top 32 quarterbacks. There's no question about it. I was actually on the Cam Newton side of that and saying, absolutely, like this guy probably does deserve a starting job in this league because he is among the 32 best quarterbacks. With the last two draft classes inserting more talent into the mix, I'm not sure I believe that anymore. I believe he's probably top 40, but top 32, I don't know if I'd say he's a starting quarterback in the league anymore. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, we're about to do what I think is going to be a really fun thing here in March when it's kind of dead NFL news, our NFL quarterback bracket. And he's not a shocker. He's not one of the 32 in the bracket. If we did a 64, Cam Newton would be on the bracket for sure. What's funny about it is my thinking is you just got to remember it's I hate the argument. I always have hated it, even when I was younger. Oh, teachers only make this much, but an NBA player or an NFL player makes this much. Even though there are 32 starting quarterback jobs, there are really only, at any given take or shape or time, about 24 of those jobs where teams are like actually looking for like, we need to win right now. There's always that about a third of the league that's like, you know what, we're trying to start a young guy. We're specifically trying to start this person, so we're not that great. I mean, do you think about the league every year? We can name off the teams here coming on up in a bit where it's like, yeah, Cam Newton might be better depending on how he looks at the pro day. If he's taken a year and a half off now, since he played, like fully healthy, gotten his body fully rehabbed, maybe he is better than a Desmond Ridder or better than a Sam Darnold if he has to start for the Niners. You can make those arguments, but is he better for what that organization is trying to do? Every organization has a goal, right? What they're trying to accomplish in the short term and the long term. And so not only do you have to be good enough to start, but you have to fit into that window. And then Cam has always been, he's not the stereotypical just plug and play quarterback like a Mitchell Trubisky, like a Sam Darnold, where you're just like, no, we can run a system and be a little mobile and take some hits. Cam is unique. He's always been unique. And so, yeah, it's interesting. It's funny. I'm more interested in DJ Fluker. He is got himself into incredible shape, and he's going to be at Alabama's pro day. And he was a guy that was drafted, I think, ended up being drafted first round and it just couldn't stay in enough shape.
First round?
Well, maybe not, but he couldn't stay in enough shape. But he's now apparently he's not even 30 years old, and he's gotten himself in, apparently from the photos I've seen, incredible shape, and he's at Alabama's pro day. And talk about a veteran offensive lineman and an interior spot that I would love to add depth to a roster for my Bears or something like that. If Fluker all of a sudden comes in and it can be reliable and his health transformation looks like it's legit.
That's true. Yeah, no, you were right. He was a first rounder, 2013 first rounder to the Chargers. So the offensive tackle
that was
looking
10
to make
years
his NFL
ago.
comeback.
So he might just now be a little over 30. So all right,
he is 32 years old.
Yeah, okay, so maybe he is a little old, but if he's, for a offensive lineman interior for a on a 1-year contract, 2-year contract, if he's in good shape, the photo I saw, he looks incredible. He looks incredible. Yeah. And so that to me, I'm more interested in than Cam Newton.
For sure. Now that'd be an awesome comeback story as well. I mean, even if he doesn't start to be that swing tackle on any sort of NFL team that is thirsty for O-line depth, that'd be pretty cool. So we'll stay tuned at the Alabama and the Auburn Pro Days to see how those turn out. But we do have, as Mark mentioned, the NFL quarterback bracket. This is what you're all here for. Pretty soon I'm going to share my screen. We are going to fill out this bracket together. So if you're listening to the show, you might want to take this opportunity now to turn over to YouTube so you can follow along, because we've got a 32 quarterback bracket here to look at. We have separated them by seedings 1 through 8. So we got 4 1 seeds, 4 2 seeds, all the way to 8. And we can kind of dive into to see how this all pans out. Of course, the 1 seeds taking on the 8s to begin this thing, and we'll see what we end up with in the final champion. Kind of how we're going to work this one out too is more about not just like, okay, who's like, do we like this quarterback better in general? It's more about like, who would you want quarterbacking your team? If we had a clean slate going into this new season, who would we want there? And we can factor in a lot of different things, setting up a franchise with a young quarterback or winning now with another one. It kind of there's some preferential treatment there. And so we'll kind of dive into that. And, full disclosure, these are obviously subjective rankings. We didn't pull these from like a CBS website or whatever with how they had these seeded. So Mark did us the honors of kind of putting in these seeds. I'll let you, Mark, describe what went into the seeding process and how you chose, because for instance, we have Trey Lance and Brock Purdy listed on here. Obviously, they're not both going to be starting quarterbacks for the 49ers, but they were 2 quarterbacks that were worthy of putting on this list. And of course, we included the 4 most prominent rookie quarterbacks coming into this next class as well. So I'll give you the floor to kind of describe that as I share my screen for this bracket.
Yeah. So Dan, I think the biggest thing for me was I looked at a couple different like offseason quarterback ranking type things. And what I really wanted to do is I wanted to make it like tournament style. So think of we've all been holding our NCAA brackets over the weekend, and that got me thinking, how can we tie this into the show? And I'm sure we're not the first people to ever do this, and I'm sure we're not going to be the last people. We're not, blowing anyone's mind here. And I think we can all assume we know who you're going to have probably winning the bracket. But that's, it's about just kind of, to me, this opening seeding. And what I did was think of it if you're a 64-team bracket and every single favorite won. So all the 1 seeds won, all the 2 seeds won, all the 3 seeds. So it's CD of 4 1s, 4 2s, 4 3s. And that way it's not like 1 through 32. I'm not trying to make the argument that that's the 32nd best guy. That's, the 31st best guy. They're in that around that range, because we always argue, is Dak better than Cousins? Is Cousins better than Dak? Well, they're both 3 seeds, right? So you can then argue there if you wanted a higher 3 seed or a lower 3 seed. I tried to make sure in doing this as well that we looked at just the talents of like, okay, the 4 kids that we think are going to be first rounders, they're in Levis, Richardson, Stroud, and Young. And then the other the other 7, 8 seeds are guys like a Purdy, a Lance, people that you would just, if you were drafting your team, you would consider them, I think, over guys like a Darnold, like a Wentz. I mean, Wentz isn't on the list. You argue that he's a better talent maybe than Lance. Yeah, sure, argue, but he's a waste of a space as far as, to me, the debate goes in what we're trying to do here and have a little fun with our 32 quarterback bracket.
Wow, waste of space. That's harsh stuff here from Mark on the football.
He's
lounge.
An easy first round out. You know what I mean? At least Lance, we can talk some fun with the upside. We haven't seen him. You know what I mean? I would take Lance right now to start my team over Wentz, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. No question. I would take Lance, starting fresh and going into a new season with a clean slate. Absolutely would take Lance. So yeah, we're going to go through this bracket. You're going to follow along with us. We'll discuss some of these matchups as we go along. It'll be fun, and we'll see who we end up with at the very end. It very well might be Mac Jones. So
I feel like I should have. I feel like I failed us here, and I should have given each bracket a name. Like the East, West, North, and South. I should have given us each side a name, but now I'm
true. We'll just go with Northwest, Southwest, Northeast, and Southeast, and we'll just do straight directionals for this bracket.
I will say, Dan and we're not filling out each our own. We're trying as a team here to make a consensus choice. So there might be times where I say, all right, I'll go with you. I'll trust you on that. And there's gonna be times where Dan does that on my favor as well. So I'm going to fill out on the paper one here along as you're going with it, just to keep track as well.
Absolutely.
I'm ready when you are to start, I think, with the number 1 overall seed up in the top left of the bracket.
Yeah. Northwest, we'll start going through this first, and then we'll transfer over to the Northeast. So we've got the 1 seed, Patrick Mahomes, taking on the 8 seed, Trey Lance. Starting off with the 2023 season, Mark, I think we're picking Patrick Mahomes to start the year with us.
Yeah, that's an easy one. I do want to take this opportunity to just say, though, for Lance, this next couple months are going to be really fascinating, aren't they? Like the idea that Lance is going to get to compete for this job, and he may end up starting at the beginning of the year. I mean, this is huge. I mean, a huge opportunity for a kid that, if it goes well and say he starts off and he's healthy and he's the starting quarterback while Purdy is rehabbing, what if he's 2-0, 3-0, playing well? It's got in those situations where you roll with the hot hand probably until he has a rough day. So huge moments for Lance coming up this summer. I'm very excited to start hearing about Trey Lance and the off-seasoning stuff. And it wouldn't shock me if Trey Lance is also the first guy, if he has a really nice preseason, to get traded early in the year if there's an injury. You know what I mean? Like if I'm a team that has a veteran or middle of the road and felt like we could compete now, or kind of looking for that quarterback, say Ryan Tannehill, knock on wood, injures himself like midway through camp. Like go out and trade for a Trey Lance. You know what I mean? Give up a 3rd round pick next year or something and just see what you got in the guy. I really still think his upside is there. He just hasn't played football.
Yeah, which is why the 49ers have been in the position they've been in. And somehow, despite all of these quarterback woes, have been able to stay competitive for a Super Bowl. But yeah, I think they're in a good position. If Trey Lance doesn't work out, they at least have a guy that they know can win games for them and win in big-time moments in Brock Purdy, and can try and build around him moving forward and really not have to eat a huge, cap hit in the interim. So I think that's kind of, in a way, a win-win for San Francisco. I'll
also say before we move on, you may start to realize there's some really good matchups in here. Once I realized who was going to be all the seeds, did I purposely make sure we had things like Carr versus Garoppolo and Wilson versus Geno Smith? You bet I did. I definitely I definitely thought those would be fun and a little more interesting to talk about, for sure.
I was going to say the 4-5s are always, really tough ones to choose in any bracket. 3-6 as well for obvious reasons, but this one in particular has really made things difficult. So we'll go to the next one there, the 4 seed Derek Carr against the 5 seed Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm interested to see what your take is on this and who wins out between these two if you were to start fresh this season with a new quarterback.
Yeah, if I'm starting fresh this season, it is tough because Jimmy G's injury history it's so worrisome. I mean, he is when he plays, and if you build the right system around him, he's such a gamer, he's such a winner, and he can be really, really efficient. Derek Carr he has a little bit of that Matt Stafford mystery still to me, where has it been Carr who's underachieved? Is it the organization that's underachieved around him? He's got, I think, a bigger arm. I think he's got a little bit bigger playmaking ability than Derek Carr. My gut leans Carr, but you could sway me to Jimmy G if you had a compelling argument.
I'm also leaning on Derek Carr, and it's very close, but for a lot of those same reasons. I think Jimmy G probably gets a slight edge in like overall leadership. And he's just known to be a guy that like everyone loves. And it's not even to say that Derek Carr isn't someone that, you know, people enjoy playing for. He clearly does seem to be a good locker room guy, but Jimmy G is just like, that's his MO. But Carr does seem to have a better rapport with weapons. Like when Carr has his like go-to dudes, they seem to be really on that same wavelength and chemistry. So that's kind of the toss up there. Carr is probably maybe a year younger. They might be the same age. I don't know. They're pretty close in age.
Both early 30s.
But the injury history for Jimmy G is definitely worrisome, and I trust Carr more out of structure than Jimmy. And so in those heat of the battle moments, if I'm planning to go to the Super Bowl, I'm going to want a Derek Carr that can maybe elevate in those moments. So we're going to take the 4 seed Derek Carr.
Yeah.
So no upsets yet early on.
In an ideal world, do I think if I had built a team and I was building my team that was all about the system and all about just needing that quarterback to not turn the ball over, I would lean towards Jimmy. But you got to remember, in the length of an 17 game season plus wanting to make through the playoffs, it's so hard to trust Jimmy G. And he's got to have to really fight that narrative in Vegas all year long. And it wouldn't shock me if Vegas drafts a quarterback. I'd be a little shocked about the first round, but if they're one of the early players on a Max Duggan in the second round and just having a protection plan behind them, it wouldn't shock me at all.
Not at all. They're certainly in play there. All right, the 3 seed Dak Prescott taking on the 6 seed Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
If you had asked me in week 11 or 12 last season, this matchup, I would have taken Dak all day. I have since flipped. The way that Pickett performed down the stretch, the consistent improvement he made would give me hope that trajectory is continuing and is going to surpass Dak early into next season. So for the upside and the clear path of improvement with much less to work with initially, I'm going Kenny Pickett. I'm taking the first upset, the 6 seed over the 3 seed, Dak Prescott.
You know, so. I'm going to struggle with this one as well. Dak is that guy that he is deserved. You know, the 3 through 5 seeds, if you start to look at them, the majority of the people in those seeds are the guys who we constantly argue about is like, well, who would you rather? And Dak is, I think, probably the number 1 overall 3 seed in the sense that when Dak is supported really, really well, you don't hear the locker room trash Dak the way you do Russell Wilson. And I think that's such a huge compliment for Dak, because Dak is a little like holier than thou. He's a little, Mr. Cowboy, say the right thing, do the right thing, Campbell's Chunky Soup. Easy to put your arm around. He really is. You could see there being
He's a wholesome character.
Yeah, you could see resentment building, but you never hear a bad thing about Dak from anyone who's played with Dak. But I do think at this point in Dak's career, with his age, with his injury history, I'm willing to go with the upset of Pickett. I think it is a pick 'em, but I think if I'm building this around my organization and what I'm thinking about, next year, I may not win as many games as the team who picks Dak, but in 2-3 years from now, I think the upside for Kenny Pickett really can be there. Kenny Pickett could be the future best person in the third, fourth, fifth rounds of quarterbacks. Is he ever going to be a number 2 seed, Kenny Pickett? I don't know. But I think he could really work himself up to a 3 seed in the years to come and be a guy who's a tremendous 3 seed. So I'll go with you. We need some upsets. I'll go with Pickett on this.
I mean, we've already seen the ceiling for Dak Prescott. We've seen the ceiling for Jimmy G and Derek Carr. We know what we're getting with those. There is, Pickett bottoming out seems much more unlikely than him continuing to grow. And so for those reasons, I just think that we can't go wrong.
That's a great pick. That's a really great way to say it. His bottoming out seems way less likely than him continuing on his growth path, even if the path of growth isn't as if the opportunity for growth isn't so gigantic. Again, his ceiling is not Lamar Jackson, but you're right. Even if this is the worst we see of Pickett, then his ability to be a starting quarterback, I think it's there. I think especially with a solid organization, Pickett is again someone I'd want to take in a really well-run organization like a Pittsburgh that is just going to do the right things, hopefully to support him with a good fan base. All right, let's move on.
Aaron Rodgers and Andy Dalton. What a grouping here for the 2 seed versus the 7 seed. I'm not sure there's a whole lot of discussion to be had here, but maybe you think otherwise. But, for me, it's Aaron Rodgers runs away with it in a similar vein that Mahomes did against Lance.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of the 1-8s, 2-7s, I there's not going to be an upset. You're not going to convince me of an upset. But I'll say this about Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton looks like he is going to Carolina. He will start for Carolina. Andy Dalton has, to me, risen to the cream of the crop. Like, you don't see a Jameis Winston on this list. And it's because there's, in a lot of ways, I think Andy Dalton has separated himself as he is the veteran 1-year bridge guy right now. Like, even in Mitchell Trubisky, if he signs somewhere, you're not really worried about him starting, unless it's an obvious rookie quarterback and they're going to basically say, yeah, we're going to start Mitch till the quarterback's ready. Andy is, I think right now, the guy in the league that you'd argue for the next year or two is the veteran bridge that in the right scenario. Like, if Andy Dalton, all of a sudden, if the Niners said, we're signing Andy Dalton, then Andy Dalton's going to be our guy with the Niners until Purdy is healthy come week 8. I'm making this is, a ridiculous scenario. But I think we could argue, dude, the Niners can easily go 5-3 with Andy Dalton. You know what I mean? Now,
right.
Is it going 5-3 with the Panthers? Probably not. But it's not necessarily going to be Andy Dalton's fault. I think my bigger argument is here is just defending that for the next year, Andy Dalton is in the 7-8 seed category, and maybe in a year or two from now he's out, but someone else will move in his place. But he deserves this spot over a Jameis, a Mitch, a Mariota. Does that make sense?
That's fair enough. I mean, based on his career and his career trajectory,
and he played well.
I'm good with that. I mean, he's the most decorated of any of those guys. I mean, he was the franchise quarterback, for the better part of a decade.
For 10 years.
Something to be said of that. So, yeah.
And if you look at his stats at the end of the year, and I was doing this when I was looking up, like, he played well for New Orleans. Like, he was not just throwing up a bunch of picks, embarrassing himself out there. He still can play the game.
For sure. All right, let's go to the Northeast. The number 1, Joe Burrow against number 8, Baker Mayfield. Baker working his way onto the bracket. Of course, he had to. The polarizing Baker Mayfield, Mr. Progressive Insurance down in Tampa Bay now, likely going to be the starter for them. We'll see what happens. But yeah, he takes on Joe Burrow. Not an easy matchup there for Baker.
Yeah, I mean, you could have swapped in Kyle Trask, but we'll go with Baker. And I'll say this about Baker. Baker, I've said it before, I'll say it again. He is the great cautionary tale. If I was an agent or in the sphere of any of these rookie quarterbacks or any of the quarterbacks who are currently on their rookie contract, I would use him as the example. You may think you're worth more than the team originally offers you when they've come to talk to you. But Baker Mayfield was offered a 5-year, $100 million extension 2 years ago. Look where he is now. He's barely hanging on in this league. And I know that $100 million was only going to be about 80 guaranteed. And he's like, that's a slap in the face. Look at what Dak just got. It was that same offseason. But the NFL landscape can change so quickly for you. If he had signed that deal, the Browns would have never been in on Watson. They maybe at this point in time would be trying to get out of that deal and moving off of Baker, fine, but he'd still have earned that money. He would have put that in the bank. And you look at a Daniel Jones, he benefited from the team just finally picking up the extension. Baker did not. It can go either way for you. You got to play yourself into it. Baker got hurt and he had a rough year on the extension. There will be a time when the team, and when you're on your rookie deal, comes at you with an extension, and be really, really smart about it, because you can make a lot of money in the NFL on that third contract if your second contract goes well. You know what I mean? Or sure. But you gotta last through that second contract. And Baker, unfortunately, now is on this raw end of a lot of now 1-year deals for low money. And this is like we said for Lance, I think this is a huge year for Baker to prove he's the next Andy Dalton, right? To where, no, I'm the guy that you want for that 1 or 2 year spot starting, because that's really all his career is now. And there's a lot of money to be made doing that, but he's got to prove it this year by playing really well in Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's on his 4th team now in 2 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant. So not only, the ability to be able to play, but to be able to stick around as well and have a team, that wants you there in that building, I think is going to speak volumes. So if he could be a career backup in Tampa, you'll take that at this point if you're Baker Mayfield, I'd say, or he's going to retire early and try and do other things. But that's the situation he's in right now. Like you said, it's a cautionary tale. And Lamar Jackson with heaps more talent is wading in similar waters of turning down significant money to bet on yourself. And it doesn't always work betting on yourself. Even though it may seem good in principle, it can backfire on you as well. So that's something to take note of for sure. We get to the 4 or 5 seed, Russell Wilson, the former Seahawk, taking on the current Seahawk, Geno Smith. Geno coming in as the 5 seed. This one's a lot more tough, even despite it being the 4 or 5, matchup, which is always difficult. I just thought in general, I would probably, if I was thinking about this on the outside, thinking about how could we possibly be having Russell Wilson match up with Geno in this type of way, yet it makes perfect sense. And I find myself actually struggling with who I take in this situation.
I do too. I put this matchup together for a couple of reasons. And I love also Baker on the same side of the bracket with Geno, because again, I'm trying to lay out the story for everyone too. Think about Geno. He's the one guy who figured it out. He had a disastrous start to his career. He started a bunch of games. It just never got going. And he was the last generation of those quarterbacks a decade ago that if you didn't play well, you still got to start your 3rd year, right? Punched a teammate, had some other off the field things. And then he went kind of 0 dark 30, took whatever backup jobs he could get. And apparently over the last 5-6 years, from all reports, has just matured, has really figured it out how to be an adult in the locker room. And he came out last year and he was terrific. For those reasons and those reasons alone, I lean towards Geno. I believe if in the right scenario, in the right situation, Russell Wilson still has plenty more talent than Geno Smith. The problem is Russell Wilson has done the opposite. He was a grinder to start his career, earned the respect. You could tell he was scrapping and clawing for every single thing he got. And now he's become, seemingly from what we've heard, entitled, parking spaces, own office, his own trainers, thinking he's something that he's just not. And I think there's a lot harder to come back from. I'm leaning towards Geno. If you have a better argument towards Russell, I'll go with it. It's 49-49. I feel like it's we're looking at the election results of Arizona or Georgia on election night. You know what I mean? Recounting the votes. So what do you think, Dan?
I also lean Geno amazingly.
Yeah.
If last year doesn't happen, I think we're both taking Wilson.
He's not. Geno's not on the bracket if last year doesn't happen.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. Geno's not on the bracket. But even if we take out Wilson last year and including Geno last year, if we put up 2021 Wilson versus 2022 Geno, I think I'd end up still taking Russell Wilson, to be honest. But because Wilson had such a cataclysmic collapse last year, that to me propelled Geno past him on the scales. And just because also, Geno's not super old. Like, he's got a good 5 years, I would think, in him of quarterback play. He just signed a
3-year deal. He's in his early 30s. And I will say this, to me, the other thing I try to factor in is Russell's last year with Seattle, remember, it got off to a bad start and he was struggling. Absolutely. And then he broke his thumb and then he missed all that time. And then he rushed himself back and it just didn't go well. So we've really had 2 straight years now of Russell Wilson playing poorly in the NFL.
Right.
And so with Geno, I think it's an easy thing. I think let's go with the upset. Let's take a 5 seed and go Geno. And part of this is, I think it's easy to say because no one's not taking Burrow in the second round versus Wilson or Smith. So it's easy to, but it's a good feel-good story. I like Geno with the feel-good story there.
We have Kirk Cousins as the 3 seed taking on the 6 seed Mac Jones. What a fun matchup.
I'm going to make my case. I think it is Cousins. I know I'm the biggest Kirk Cousins hater here, but I think I'm going to lean towards Cousins in this matchup. I've specifically put this one together too because I think they are so similar, and Mac Jones, his upside, I think, is Kirk Cousins in so many ways. I do think Mac Jones is a bigger physical athlete. I think he's a little bit more mobile, but let's just be honest. Kirk Cousins' production the last 4 years, it's insane. I mean, he is producing as a top 5 quarterback. And if I'm just starting my team in 1 year, I know he's going to come in. He's going to be a professional. He'll rally his teammates in that kind of nerdy white guy quarterback way with the chains and all that stuff. And worst comes to worse, my team gets bounced in the first round of the playoffs. With Mac Jones, I truly don't know yet if he really can play in the league. So I'm going Cousins.
It's the battle of the backyard barbecue dads right now.
Yeah. McCorkle.
And which one is making the better hamburger? I think Cousins goes with the McCormick seasoning, the classic, and Mac Jones probably tries to get a little bit too creative with the process, some paprika and garlic powder, and you're just like, dude, come on. This is a burger here. That's why I'm going with Kirk Cousins. No, but in all seriousness, Kirk Cousins does win this one out because he has been the guy that's consistently produced, and he's maintained a career as my copy and paste continues to be weird and not work on this.
Much on the YouTube.
But yeah, he obviously, has been at his ceiling for several years. Mac Jones, we just don't know. But Kirk does produce. He does get wins. He is that guy that's never going to make the crucial, fatal mistakes that just tank your season.
Yeah.
But he's also not going to make the consistent game-winning plays after game-winning plays. So for now, it's got to be Kirk Cousins because of his history and what he's been able to do and in leading a team. We just don't know enough about Mac, but this could certainly be flipped after a solid, productive season in New England for Mac Jones. The number 2 seed Lamar Jackson to round out the Northeast bracket here, taking on the 7 seed Brock Purdy. What a story that was last year. Goes from the final pick in the NFL draft to a guy that's 1 win away from a Super Bowl appearance in the NFC Championship game. But Brock Purdy probably not standing much of a chance here against Lamar Jackson's just sheer talent and ability to, provide that electric splash that is so desperately needed in the NFL. He doesn't, we don't know what team he's going to be playing on, but I think we're going with Lamar Jackson regardless, just because of obviously that skill set.
Yeah, Lamar is the winner here, and he's one of those. This is why I love the way you seed this. He's not a 1; he's a definite 2. But when he plays at his peak, he might be as close to 1-1 as you can get. But I do want to spend just a second talking about Brock Purdy. The same way I talked about Trey Lance, Brock Purdy is the guy on this list who next year, if we do this again in March, could be as high up as like a 4. You know what I mean? Like you could honestly see him moving up into the 4 or 3s. But he's also the guy that could very easily fall off this list. And we never talk about Brock Purdy again, because if Trey Lance has a really great year and things come together, like, you know, he's just that flash in the pan type. Maybe he ends up like Jimmy G and eventually gets a chance. So big year for Purdy. Hope his rehab is going well. And personally, I hope that he is healthy enough to play in the preseason. So you get a little bit you got to love a good quarterback controversy. It looks like the best chance we have for that is in San Francisco this upcoming year. So hopefully he's healthy enough to have a real quarterback controversy.
Yeah, that would make things very fascinating in the Bay Area for sure. Let's go to the Southwest. Number 1, Jalen Hurts. Number 8, Will Levis.
Yeah. Levis, you might notice that some of the rookies are 7s, the others are 8. It's kind of interchangeable. I put Levis as an 8 just because I think Levis, we both had him right there, with Young. We have Stroud number 1, but Levis and Young are kind of like, well, it depends on your situation. I think in this world where it's not, I'm the Houston Texans or am I the Panthers, who am I choosing, where it's like, I'm just choosing. I do like the idea of taking a Young over Levis in this world. But I think here it's obvious Hurts is a 1. Hurts earned the 1. And this was a debatable thing. A lot of people, I put up a poll on Twitter and it was split between Rodgers and Hurts, who deserved to be the 1. I think Hurts deserves it in his recent play after last year, especially. Obviously Rodgers is more historic, but we're talking about future. We're not talking about past. Hurts is an easy one. I'm excited for Will Levis. Latest mock draft says he's going. I just saw it today. I think he's going to Indy in Mel Kiper's latest mock draft. That'd be interesting. But Jalen Hurts is a 1 seed, and he's got a tough bracket. Hurts has maybe a tougher road to get through than the other number 1 seeds. And we'll talk about that as we get closer to that. But so I don't want to waste time on it now.
In the 4 and 5, we have the $250 million man in the 4 seed in Deshaun Watson against the 5 seed, $38 man, Justin Fields. Who we got winning this matchup right here? Honestly, I'm taking Fields all day. To me, it's not even that difficult of a thing. Like seeing, I think we may Watson's going to perform better this year than he did last season. I think that is something that we can probably agree on. But I do think we may be seeing a capped and limited Deshaun Watson for the rest of his career, and I'm willing to ride that plane of Justin Fields now. With if we're starting over and all things are the same. I'm going with his unbelievable ability to create big splash plays, which is on par with Watson, but I'm taking the youth and I'm taking the continual, ability to improve and improve and improve in Justin Fields. To me, that makes him an easier choice for me than Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the pick is Fields, but I think if Watson is an interesting 4 seed because Watson is the guy in the line of the 4s, Wilson, Watson, Murray, and Carr. He, to me, is the one guy of the 4 seeds that has the potential to make a large jump up. If Watson, after a full offseason with Kevin Stefanski and in that Browns offense with Chubb and getting to work with Amari Cooper, and I think they need to draft a wide receiver as well to keep helping out Deshaun Watson and protect their investment. He's the guy that, we saw him. Early in his career, he just captivated us with his talent. So he has the ability to make the leap. But Justin Fields is the guy to me in the 5 seed. When you look at Fields, Geno, Jimmy, and Daniel Jones, he is the highest ceiling 5 seed by far. And Fields is the guy that would it shock you if he was in the 2 bracket next year? I don't think it would. So the pick is Fields. You may say this is our Bears bias, Chicagoland bias, what have you. Again, this is based on what we've seen and where we're projecting. I feel much more comfortable as my organization drafting Justin Fields in this realm, in this world, than I do touching Deshaun Watson right now. If Deshaun Watson would have came back week 13 and just been Deshaun Watson and been electric and been amazing and led the Browns to a near playoff run, then he'd be like, well, listen, the off-field stuff, he's clearly a horrible human being, but he is without a doubt a top 10 quarterback. But he didn't show us that. So we're still having to kind of like Russell Wilson go back like, okay, if I go back to 2020, he was amazing. That's a long time ago. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, you got to look a ways in the rearview mirror to get back to that dominant level of performance. So we'll see if we can get back to it, but I think we feel safe with the Justin Fields pick. The 3 seed Matthew Stafford taking on the 6 seed Ryan Tannehill, both on the back legs of their careers.
Yeah.
Both provide totally different types of skill sets. One, though, has won a Super Bowl. The other still chasing really any playoff success to be spoken of. So, my vote's for Matt Stafford. What do you have on this front? Because obviously Stafford has a major injury concern now with that elbow coming off of last year, but Tannehill didn't inspire much in the injury front either.
Yeah, if you look at the other 6 seeds, I think Tannehill fits in really well with the 6 seeds. He is he's like the grown-up version. He's the older version of Kenny Pickett at this point. We are like, oh, okay, there's a lot of things you like, but you can tell the ceiling, but yet Pickett's got his career ahead of him. Tannehill looks like his career is now behind him. 2 years ago, we'd have done this bracket. Tannehill would have probably been a 3 seed. I mean, it's been a steep decline over the last year and a half for Tannehill struggle with some injuries, things falling around him. I think Stafford's the obvious choice. I think Stafford is a 3 seed that I think could make some real noise in the next round. Because a year ago, again, if we did this bracket, Stafford would be a 2. I mean, he'd be right there too, maybe even a battling for that 1. But this was such a disastrous injury year for him that it's hard to really put where Stafford land. So I'll go with Stafford, and I think you will as well.
Yes. The Bryce Young conversation is interesting because he is, highly touted as being, the one prospect in the last several years that has it all ready to go into the NFL outside of the aesthetics and, size. But he has the leadership, the playmaking ability, the accuracy, the experience in a Power 5, the winning leadership, everything. He has all of it, package deal. But so did the guy he's up against here, and that's the number 2 seed, Trevor Lawrence. Bryce Young coming in as a 7 seed. No real debate here. I mean, we're taking the prodigy and Trevor Lawrence, but it is interesting to see the 2 guys who, in many ways, they're different in terms of their style, no question about it. One's, the prototypical size, the other not at all. But they're both guys coming from massive powers in Clemson and Alabama. 2 guys who, are touted as, the top of their class. Now, Lawrence was the prodigy. Bryce Young not getting that love, but Heisman winner. So there's a lot about both where the spotlight's on it. There's going to be a lot of attention paid to Bryce Young early in his career. We'll see where he gets there, but we both saw the leap Trevor Lawrence made last year, and he is now well on his way to stardom if he hasn't even already gotten to that point.
Yeah, I think the only point I'd add to it about Bryce Young is that Bryce Young, the only thing that for me is hard to quantify into his draft stock, right, is that to me, he really is Zach Wilson, where in the same vein where you're like, dude, this guy, he looks like Patrick Mahomes. Like he plays the position like Patrick Mahomes. The difference is I trust Bryce Young's maturity and who he is. I did not trust Zach Wilson's. And Zach Wilson is a little bit thicker, a little bit bigger, and he's already dealt with injury concerns. So I like Young a lot. I can't wait to watch him in the NFL. I'll eat crow on Young and say if in 3 years from now he is terrific and Stroud and the others are struggling, I will eat crow on it. Eileen, Stroud, slightly Levis over Young, but if Bryce Young ends up being a prodigy, it's not that we didn't see it. It's just we have the questions about the size.
The injury concerns are real, and it's a problem. And,
yeah,
for those who were concerned about that with Kyler Murray, although Kyler Murray has had, has been a superstar in this league, those same people weren't technically wrong either, because we already are seeing the injuries come up for Kyler Murray as well as other aspects of his game. But so that it's just a good thing to point to is that, both sides can be right on this thing, because as you mentioned, we are acknowledging that the talent is there. He has everything to be a superstar. You have to weigh whether or not you're willing to take the risk that seems to be higher with some of his stature versus that of a, Josh Allen, for instance.
And let's just be clear. I think we both feel this way. If we had to then choose in the pile of the people who don't make it out of the first round, all these quarterbacks, he would be very high at the top of the list of the people who don't make it out that I'd want to choose to start my team from, right? Like, sure. I would take Young over a Tannehill, over a Jimmy G. I would take him over Mac Jones, Purdy. You know what I mean? Like, we're not Lance, but it's just in this matchup, in this world, we have to be a little critical, and it's tough.
Yeah, and he at least got a 7 seed there, so there's some of the props thrown his way for sure. We've got 2 quarterbacks on the southeast corner now of the bracket in Josh Allen and Anthony Richardson at number 8.
I had to do this.
Both the quarterbacks obviously, presenting very similar skill sets, raw prospects coming out of college. Richardson, highly athletic. Allen was athletic, but certainly not to the extent that we saw in the NFL transition, but he improved greatly in his accuracy. Some are saying Richardson's worth the take because he might improve his accuracy greatly as well. So an interesting toss-up here between these two, but obviously, as we mentioned, it's the 1 seed Allen, and he's not going to get beat out by an unproven 8-seeded rookie. But it is an interesting matchup to talk about, no doubt.
Yeah, no, I mean, Allen's the choice, but Richardson, again, we're both excited to see where he ends up. And then we think, like we all know,
fit for him is going to be key.
Yeah, we all know every quarterback's success is depending on where they're drafted. We said it before, we'll say it again. Patrick Mahomes was drafted by the Bears, not Mitch Trubisky. He wouldn't be the Patrick Mahomes we know him today. Would he still be really good? Probably. Would he be what he is? Definitely not. It depends on where you go. And Richardson, if he ends up in the right spot with the right organization that takes care of him the right way, he could be Josh Allen. We could be talking about a guy in 3 years from now, 4 years from now, is a 1 on this bracket. I can't wait to watch where he gets drafted and see his career pan out.
No question. Moving on. Number 4, Kyler Murray. Number 5, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones getting the 5 seed. To me, Mark, this is maybe the most controversial seeding that you have in this whole bracket.
Okay. Yeah, listen, I just thought to myself, Daniel Jones, if you look at the 6 seeds, he's him and Mac Jones, all right, flip-flop, it's close. Tua, I think he's a bigger, stronger, more physical athlete. Pickett, we only have such a small sample size. And then Tannehill, he's a younger Ryan Tannehill, so I gave him the nod there. It's a low-end 4. I'm going with Kyler Murray. I don't know about you. Even with the injury, even with the off-the-field concerns. But it's a huge year. Daniel Jones has the chance, I think, Murray can't help himself really this year because he's injured. So Murray's in this limbo. Kyler Murray's got to wait another year, and even if he comes back and plays at all, the team will probably not be in contention, and it'll be you can't judge him too hard. So we have a whole nother year of waiting till we get to really judge to see where Kyler Murray has matured and what he can still become. For Daniel Jones, we're going to know right away. Was this a flash in the pan, or can him and Brian Daboll really make something of his career?
There is then an element of the unknown with Daniel Jones. I'll give you that because, there's definitely a possibility that he could, improve and make his way into relevancy amongst these conversations and give worth to that 5 seed for sure. But I also agree Murray is the choice here, just based on that ability to elevate the team in general, just star quality play. Kyler Murray gives you that. Daniel Jones does not, at least not yet. The 3 seed Jared Goff, former Super Bowl quarterback, taking on Tua Tagovailoa at the number 6 seed. Tua got those injury question marks. Obviously is in a better, position in Miami maybe than you would say Goff is in Detroit. But Goff is that proven guy. He's been there, done that. And he may not be the flashiest player, but he's been able to get it done. Meanwhile, Tua already question marks about the injury concerns there. So who you got in this matchup?
Yeah, the choice is Goff. I don't think it's a difficult one. I think that you trust his health. And listen, Goff, after 2 years in Detroit, the arrow is pointing so far up for Detroit. And with Tua has the chance, I think, to eventually move to a 3 seed, but Goff is an established 3 seed. And Goff, like Tannehill, in 2-3 years from now, will his play maybe tail off and take a couple hits, that slight frame, and all of a sudden he's dropped down to the 4 or 5, 6 seed? But right now he's the better quarterback, and I would be much happier if my team out of these two choices had Goff over Tua.
100% with you there. Nothing else to add. Finally, as we round out the opening round, number 2, Justin Herbert against number 7, CJ Stroud. Herbert obviously had a little bit of a down year last year, but he hasn't had the perfect recipe for success in Los Angeles since coming into the league. Certainly a better situation than maybe other rookie quarterbacks, but not the best by any stretch of the imagination either. They've been plagued by injuries. So, Herbert obviously maybe wasn't able to put up the numbers last year and continue that trajectory that we had seen the couple years prior. That being said, it's Justin Herbert. He's awesome. He's a 2 seed for a reason. CJ, we don't know. He's our number 1 quarterback coming into the league. We'll see where he ends up as well. Find out what he can do at the next level. But 2 very interesting quarterbacks because they are big body guys. I think CJ way more mobile than the pundits are maybe making him out to be because he didn't run that much in college.
Similar to Herbert.
We've seen it on display. Exactly. They're very similar guys. I imagine that was an influence here for the matchup.
Yeah, it certainly was. Herbert's the choice, obviously, but Stroud is the kid that I think the only thing that I would say Herbert versus Stroud coming out, the difference is Herbert we knew had just an absolute cannon. Yeah. Stroud throws a really nice deep ball, but Herbert deep down in there, you knew there was like an ungodly cannon. And at times it has proven to be his best attribute as an NFL quarterback. But again, Stroud, it looks like he may be going to Carolina. And I think they, it's all be about, can they support him the right way? And with that head coach, I think there's a chance he could be a real success story down there.
Absolutely.
The
all
NFC
right, now
needs it. The NFC needs young, good quarterbacks. We need quarterbacks in the NFC. So,
and ironically enough, 2 of the top pickers are going to be, the outside of the Panthers, it's going to be the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. So, we want to try and balance the scales with the young quarterbacks, but we're going to at least be putting a couple more into the AFC as well. Definitely. All right, we've talked about all 32 quarterbacks now, which is good. We've set the stage. Now we can kind of rifle through some of these matchups. We'll go back to the Northwest, I should say. Mahomes versus Derek Carr. I think we're both taking Mahomes in this one, right?
Yeah, obviously Carr can't. Yeah. He goes from the AFC to the NFC, and he still gets bounced by Mahomes. It's a tough. It's right. A tough look for him. But I don't think, again, it's not a slight at Derek Carr to lose to the number 1 overall seed.
Number 6, Kenny Pickett against number 2, Aaron Rodgers. I think you got to go Aaron Rodgers here, despite maybe only having 1 more year of him. I think he gives you the best chance to, hey, if he only gives me 1 more year, but I get a ring out of the deal, I'll take that versus the development of Pickett long-term in the next 8 years, but not knowing, if I'll be competitive for a Super Bowl in that time. Whereas Rodgers, for 1 season, can get you to the promised land.
It's a more interesting matchup if you had it be like Fields, Rodgers, or one of the other younger quarterbacks who already we know has the upside. I could even argue, I could even argue
Like a Trevor Lawrence versus Rodgers would probably be, you'd go Lawrence.
I could, even I would argue Jared Goff. Like, I mean, you might have 3-4 more. Like, there's arguments there because of Rodgers. But yeah, Rodgers is the choice.
Rodgers is the choice there. We'll go to the Northeast. Burrow versus Geno Smith. And the 1 seeds continue to run through.
Yeah, Joey B deserves the win here. Geno's a nice story. They're an FDU type story, but their Cinderella run has ended here.
Close matchup in number, but probably not in reality as we look at it. 3 Kirk Cousins versus 2 Lamar Jackson. Cousins is going to give you 16 games, but Jackson's the guy that can put you over the top. So my vote is for Jackson, but I will let you make a case if you'd like to for Kirk Cousins.
I'm going to go with Lamar as well when push comes to shove, but I do think there's a case for the fact that Kirk Cousins, if you just are trying to be consistent, if you're a dragged organization, you know what I mean? The Washingtons, the Chicagos, the Detroits, the Jacksonvilles, the Houstons that just for historically cannot get out of your own way. Don't it's like what Andy Dalton did for Cincinnati for 10 years. Like, don't overblow the fact that you have to win Super Bowl. Sometimes just being stable at quarterback for a bad organization for 5, 8, 10 years is just a sigh of relief. And Kirk Cousins does that. But if you want to win Super Bowls, Lamar Jackson obviously is the choice there.
Go to the Southwest bracket.
Jalen
Hurts, Justin Fields.
I did this on purpose. I'm not going to let my homerism, like, Hurts deserves the win here. Hurts is
for sure.
Hurts is Field in a year from now, this could be an even more interesting matchup that we'd see later in the bracket. Because I think Justin Fields, again, has the upside, but Hurts still has the upside and has already proven it. He's a year ahead of Justin. Let's circle Justin Fields for the 2024 March quarterback madness bracket.
What do you got for Matt Stafford versus Trevor Lawrence?
Again, if I knew Stafford's health, I think this is a much closer matchup to win now and to win this year. But I think you have to go Lawrence because Lawrence, again, late down the stretch, he won big games and proved it on the biggest levels. He was in that game even versus Patrick Mahomes for a while there. I mean, I think the rest of the AFC guys, the Burrow, the Jackson, the Mahomes, Allen, they're all looking at Lawrence like, beep, like this is he's not going anywhere, folks. And I think he deserves to be here. But that is not a slight against Stafford. Again, I think Stafford is the closest 3 we have to a 2. And if Stafford has a big bounce back year and leads the Rams on a deep run, it would not shock me. And I think if he's healthy, he is without a doubt, in my opinion, with Jalen Hurts, he is the second best quarterback in the NFC when healthy.
I agree. Josh Allen taking on Kyler Murray.
Yeah, Josh Allen's the pick here especially because of Murray's injury concerns. But Kyler, again, I mean, Kyler's just in this limbo, and it's tough because he had such momentum going into this year. He gets the contract. I think if we had done this last year, Kyler Murray would have been a 3, maybe even you can argue close to a 2, despite how the playoffs ended poorly for him. He's now going to have a defensive head coach. He's going to have a whole new world he comes back to when he's healthy, ready to play again in Arizona. So how will he adapt to that? It'll be fascinating, but Allen's the better player and Allen's the generational talent.
For sure. But Murray does have that ability. And so, yeah, we'll see if he can turn his career around and get back on track. This is a tough one. Jared Goff in the 3 seed versus the 2 seed Justin Herbert. It's a lot closer than I think people might think.
I agree. I think Herbert's the choice, but I think that you can make the argument for Goff, and it's a very similar to Stafford Lawrence. The difference is Goff and Herbert are a little closer in age, but the problem is Goff doesn't have the Stafford upside. You know what I mean? Like they're very similar matchups. These 3-2s are almost mirror each other. The difference is Goff's healthy, Stafford's not. Goff lower ceiling, Stafford giant ceiling still. Lawrence, I think with Herbert, if you just did the 2 seeds, man, what a fascinating bracket that would be. And maybe that's something we can talk about here quickly as we continue on and march through it.
Yeah, so all 1s and 2s, no surprises there. That's what is to be expected with this bracket and with the NFL quarterback. So now we go back to Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, 1 and 2 seed matchup. And Mahomes has everything Rodgers can give you and then some. So I think we're going Mahomes, and that's not even a question.
3 years ago, after Aaron's first MVP, not his first, his first MVP at the back-to-back year. So his first one in a couple years. I think this is a fascinating argument. I think Aaron's a 1 seed at that point in time because we had still had Patrick Mahomes just fresh off a Super Bowl, but it was Aaron Rodgers MVP. I think it's a way, but where Aaron's at his age right now, it's just you can't. And Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL.
Burrow and Lamar Jackson, another pretty interesting because they're so complete opposites. But the 1 seed Joe Burrow has just given you enough, and he's already gone to a Super Bowl at this point. I mean, it's really hard to deny Burrow a win here.
The Super Bowl versus the MVP, I think we all agree the Super Bowl, and it's a what have you done for me lately league. Lamar Jackson is a guy that is very much the potential to be a 1 seed. He is if he comes back, whoever he plays for this year, would it shock any one of us if he's an MVP again? No. I mean, his upside is insane. But Burrow right now is the better player and who's had the better health and better luck the last 2 years.
Jalen Hurts versus Trevor Lawrence, the toughest one of the Elite 8.
I designed it that way. I think I tried to make sure that Mahomes or Burrow, I think we all kind of agree are 1-2, and you give them maybe a little easier matchups. These next 2 are very difficult. And I'm actually going to call the upset with this one. I think Trevor Lawrence would be my guy.
Same here.
And the reason why Jalen Hurts is phenomenal. But why in this world I do it is because I think if you're just talking about looking at the human beings and their upside, Trevor Lawrence is a bigger athlete. I think they're both the same age. Like the length of their careers, I think could be very much defined by the fact that Lawrence is bigger, stronger. He doesn't run as much. Hurts already with the soft tissue injury, missed some time at the end of the year. Hurts is a gamer. Hurts is phenomenal. There are a lot of worse things you could do in your life than have Jalen Hurts your quarterback. When you compare him to Trevor Lawrence, it's hard to go against Trevor Lawrence.
What about Allen and Herbert? Because I agree on the Trevor Lawrence front for all those same reasons. But Allen and Herbert also a little bit close. But I'd probably say that for me, I would go with the not the underdog, but the favorite in Josh Allen.
I would agree because we've seen Allen perform really, really well in the playoffs. We have yet to see Herbert shine in the playoffs. Both these guys, you could argue, have slightly underachieved based on just their physical raw ability. But Allen is the physical freak who, yes, he had a bad playoff game in this year's playoffs to end his playoffs, but we've seen him shine and go toe to toe with the best of the best and lose not because of his own fault. I worry about Allen's organization around him, but I don't necessarily worry about Josh Allen.
Yep. Totally agree about that. So now we get to the final 4. All AFC. 1s, but 1-2 with Trevor Lawrence there. Mahomes versus Lawrence. What a fascinating matchup that is. And it sucks you got to choose between those 2. Mahomes is when you're doing this that Mahomes is going to win the bracket anyway. So but it is fun to talk about. And I think the thing you could make the argument for would be age. I think there's a couple years of difference. And the only other thing you could argue for is that Patrick Mahomes right now, again, in this scenario, you don't have Andy Reid. You don't have the Chiefs organization. So what is he stripped of that? It's a little bit of the Tom Brady thing he had Belichick, he had the Patriots, but I think what we're learning is that Mahomes is the engine that makes all of that run. It is a good car built around him, but
he's the engine, and Trevor Lawrence right now is if he can make the Jacksonville Jaguars, just like Josh Allen has made the Bills into a contender year in, year out, that says a lot about how great they are.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to your point about that too, because it was a good one. If you like, I would actually say Lawrence has a little bit of a leg up in the hyper precision department.
Yeah.
I think he is more, now Mahomes can make the most unbelievable plays and put the ball in spots that you would never dream possible. But I think Lawrence, from what he can do within the pocket, is pretty remarkable. And so he does get a slight edge there, but Mahomes has the edge in every other category, even without Andy Reid, as you said. So he gets the win there. But I also think it's another thing where it's closer than people may want to give it credit for, with the fact that Lawrence is he's on the precipice of being an absolute superstar.
Yeah.
And he's probably going to be in that category by mid-season next year. So we'll see how that turns out.
I mean, we're lucky. The next couple of years we do this bracket, we probably don't have to do it the next couple of years because
it's going to be the same
Mahomes,
like Elite
Burrow,
Eight pretty
Lawrence,
much.
Allen, Hurts, Jackson, Herbert, Fields, we believe they're not going anywhere. These guys are young and they're entering their primes or in their primes. Burrow, Allen, I think it's a toss-up. I think it depends on what you believe, but I think the playoff success, Joe Burrow's played in a Super Bowl. He has beaten Mahomes more consistently. I would take Joe Burrow as is 1B, Allen is 1C. Lawrence is 1D, maybe, or 2A, you'd argue. But I go Burrow.
Yeah, the one knock, and I even struggle to say a knock because it's not so much a negative as it is just a positive for Joe Burrow. Burrow succeeded in a little bit of dysfunction.
Yeah.
And succeeded when things weren't in place yet for him. Whereas Allen needed to be brought along. And obviously he's worked his way now to where he's a 1 seed, and deservedly so in this bracket. But I trust Burrow in more overall situations than I do a Josh Allen. There is some question there about, did he reach his max with Daboll, and was he more reliant in terms of the growth of his career and the trajectory there on that type of coaching versus Burrow seemingly carrying everything himself?
Historically bad franchises, Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Jacksonville, where they've just never been consistent enough. They may have had peaks, are now set with historically great quarterbacks, and that's really exciting. And so, you'd argue Herbert and Mahomes came into situations where it's already going well. I mean, Philip Rivers had the Chargers consistently in and around the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes comes in. The Chiefs have won the division 8 straight years. Patrick Mahomes hasn't started for 8 straight years. So they came into maybe more, set situations and have helped carry it. So the AFC is very lucky in that way. The only thing that'll be interesting is some of these in the next year or two, if we do this again, if the landscape is changing, because maybe finally some of the NFC young quarterbacks really start popping or actually winning Super Bowls, as opposed to just the veteran NFC guys winning Super Bowls like Brady and Stafford.
Yeah, obviously we have Mahomes as the winner, so that's where that bracket goes. But it'd be, to your point, we could also be seeing a rookie quarterback now come next year, entering year 2, being in the discussion of, like, is year 2 going to be a huge leap for this player like Jalen Hurts?
Yeah.
Where 2 years ago we weren't talking about this guy as being a NFL starter, let alone a starter in a Super Bowl, an MVP candidate, and, on the precipice of winning a championship. So it can all change very quickly. As you said, Justin Fields could be a powerhouse guy. What if Kenny Pickett catapults himself into like a 3 seed area in after just 2
Lamar
seasons?
Jackson
a lot of things can happen.
Of winning a Super Bowl. What if Deshaun Watson comes back really into form and leads the Browns to a AFC championship game? I mean, a lot of it's up to chance. So exciting. This was fun. This is kind of what we're going to do in March and April. I mean, we got the draft in April, but May, how it goes. We find weird things to keep ourselves entertained.
Absolutely. Got to keep the off-season juices flowing, and we are certainly doing that. There's plenty more news that's going to be coming out in the coming weeks of as free agency kind of begins to conclude, and we'll see if there are any more, big bombs to drop, to use a phrase there. But Lamar Jackson, of course, being the one that we've keeping our eyes on all throughout the next coming weeks. So that's been fun. That is our NFL quarterback bracket. Let us know online what you think of it. If you disagree with anything, be sure to let us know. Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. Like, subscribe on YouTube as well. It really helps us out there. But thanks all for tuning in, and we'll see you back here next time.